excited to be here, as I always am with CoMotion. It brings together a unique and interesting group of people that in some respects have become kind of a global family. We see each other at these events regularly. And I'm particularly excited because Miami's my hometown, and this topic is one that I think is both relevant and timely. So I'm just going to read briefly the description of this panel. Miami is a hotbed of multicultural innovation, a testing ground for new ideas in tech, mobility, and policy. And now the recently launched Miami-Dade Innovation Authority breaks exciting new grounds in how cities and regions can support local ecosystems innovation. Learn more about how public agencies, private companies, foundations, and investors are working together to foster the next big solutions for creating sustainable, safe, and equitable mobility. So with us today, we're very fortunate to have Miami-Dade County Commissioner Danielle Cohen Higgins. Francesca de Quesada Covey, Chief of Economic Innovation and Development for the county. Well, I'm going to call Cassie, if that's okay.
Chessie, yes.
Chessie,
yes.
Sorry. Yeah, you get it wrong every time.
It's non-phonetic, so it's always,
that's
yeah.
Exactly. And Erick Gavin, Executive Director of Venture Miami. It's great to have you all here. So what I'd like to do briefly, before we get into the broader discussion, is a brief thought exercise that for those of you who live in Miami or spent a significant amount of time in Miami-Dade County, I think might make sense. I'd like you to roll back in your mind to 2018. And now put yourself in that 2018 mindset. And in your 2018 person, imagine what the world of Miami-Dade County would look like in 2023. And ask yourself, is the world that exists today what you would have imagined 5 years ago? And I brought this question up the other day, and Erick said he'd like me to pitch that one to him. So I'm going to put you on the spot briefly here. Does Miami-Dade County in 2023 look like what you would have imagined it would have been in 2018? And if not, how is it different?
Absolutely not. I think most people in this room, if you are from Miami, you were in 2018 or in a time where you love Miami, you loved your city, you love your county, you like what was happening in Miami, but you might not think that growth was a thing that could be considered what would happen in Miami. You don't think a huge influx of people coming into Miami. You don't think technology is tied to what Miami actually is, but that is what we're becoming synonymous with. Like now, saying Miami is a tech hub is not at all weird to say. I think we might say it every single day, multiple times a day, if you will. So when we talk about 2018, a lot of the times, and at that time I was in the tech ecosystem working at a tech company, a lot of people in the ecosystem were saying, hey, Miami Tech is really cool because we've had Magic Leap and a lot of our other larger companies up the coast doing really well, but it's siloed. The community is not together in the way that we would love it to be. Investment is not happening. Access to capital was a huge question at the time. Comparing ourselves to other major metropolitan areas wasn't really a thing that we could do. We do that regularly now. The explosive growth that has happened in Miami since 2020, post-pandemic, has been a really clear indication that we are heading in the right direction. Obviously, and we'll talk about this in the panel today, we have a lot of ways to go in terms of what we need to do in order to get to that point, but I think it's substantially different than anything I could have imagined in 2018.
That's great, thank you. Any other comments on that before we get?
In 2018, I was part of a payments team at a large technology company based out of Silicon Valley, and we looked at Miami as a bridge to Latin America. We did not look at Miami as a destination in itself. And so as we were launching our new products, we would consider, and we were crisscrossing the globe, we would consider coming to Miami to really harness the energy from the region. And now what's changed is that Miami is a region unto itself. Miami-Dade County is a technology destination, the way that Erick was saying, on its own, and it doesn't serve as a bridge to another location.
Great, thank you. Commissioner, anything else to add? Or?
Only to add, we are substantially at a different place today than we were 5 years ago. Miami has undergone incredible challenges that I don't think anyone would have predicted in 2018, obviously including the global pandemic, the horrific collapse of Surfside, and the incredible, enormous growth of our population here in the county. But all of those issues set aside, I think that we are at a much better place 5 years later, despite all of those incredible challenges, in part due to the incredible people that have joined our community, and it's incumbent on us as government, as elected officials, to obviously manage that growth and prepare us for the next 5 years. But looking back over the last 5 years, Miami is positioned to really be a leader in the world of innovation, and I look forward to what's to come.
Thank you. And just to put an exclamation point, the commissioner made a point about the population growth. I was at an event about a week ago, and someone said, well, how long have you lived in Miami? And I said, just over 10 years. And he said, well, you're a native then, right? I mean, that's hard to imagine, but the change has occurred so rapidly that someone who's been here 10 years has that sort of perspective. So starting with Commissioner Cohen Higgins, this is an interesting issue, I think, because the brand of Miami is one that is sort of uniform. We've become known as a tech and innovation hub, but when people think Miami, they don't distinguish between the city of Miami and Miami-Dade County, but the county in some respects is a much larger scale and scope and power in some ways. And so I would put that to you and ask you the question, what specifically is the county doing to foster an innovation climate here in the region?
Yeah, thank you for the question. You're absolutely right. The city of Miami is often synonymous with the brand of Miami-Dade County. Miami-Dade County is a community of 3 million people as far north as Aventura and as far south as Florida City. We have 34 municipalities in Miami-Dade County. City of Miami is one of them. And, I think the largest change that is redirecting not only the city of Miami, but the entire county towards being a destination for innovation and technology is the fact that we have new leaders, right? Our government is almost entirely new in Miami-Dade County, and you have government officials that are truly dedicated to partnering with innovative companies to provide solutions for our county. If you are dealing with a government that is closed-minded, that is only interested in doing things the way that it has always been done, you're not going to get your product or your service into that community as easily as you would here in Miami-Dade County. So the leadership in the county has changed. The leadership is significantly plugged into innovation and is taking very proactive steps to welcome innovation. And so the answer to your question is, we are positioning ourselves to be better prepared for being that innovation community because we are actively embracing it, whether it's electronic buses, whether it's preparing our airport. We saw the largest volume of passengers at MIA last year than any other year before. We are now forced to embrace, and we're not forced because we don't want to, we're forced because we have this exponential growth to embrace innovation, to help make sure that we're meeting the expectations of our community. And with your help and your creative ideas and solutions, I know that we can do that.
Amen to that as a Miamian, so thank you. So Erick, I wanted to ask you, Venture Miami, from a branding perspective, is sort of groundbreaking in that you're highlighting a particular aspect to the business of the city. You've probably got the coolest government website I've ever seen of any government agency, and it references capital of capital. So, direct from the office, what is the mission of Venture Miami? What does capital of capital mean? And help us understand, how that relates to what's happening here in the county and the region.
Of course. So, as executive director of Venture Miami, I was appointed specifically for the purpose of expanding on helping technologists, companies, and individuals as they came into the city of Miami, make Miami home. And as we've started off in that initial version, from this task force that was reactive to all of the people that were coming in to now, thinking about how do we make sure that the energy that's coming in, as Commissioner just put really eloquently, making sure that we leverage it for locals that are actually exist in the city of Miami and have been here much before all of this new energy that has come in. So my office is an economic development office. We focus specifically on technology and innovation. but we leverage technology and innovation, or the technology innovation industry, to support talent development and entrepreneurship. And the ways that we do that are different than how normal economic development offices do, which is why we built our site in such a unique and branded way. Because one thing about Miami is, one, not only we're unique because we're a really cool city, but trying to make sure that we connect with people in a way that doesn't make people feel like government sometimes, right? And that doesn't mean that government is a bad thing, but it's just that sometimes people's perception or vision of what government is really, their perspective is drawn from where they come from. So if you come from a Chicago or from an LA, I'm from Chicago originally, if LA, Boston, or another place with a city, you may not have a great relationship or even had any type of relationship with your government. What we wanted to do was make sure that we had a point of engagement with people who were coming in, so that they know we had open, welcome arms in terms of how you interact with the city. So as people have come in and done that, we have made sure to start pivoting that into, hey, you're a company that's coming in and you're looking for talent. We're going to have hiring fairs, we're going to have engagements, and we're going to make sure that local talent is front-facing for you, so that you never ask the question, where's talent in Miami? Which people have asked quite a bit. If we're talking about founders and entrepreneurs coming into the city, we don't have fully established resources that they know they can go to. But we want to make sure that they know how they can navigate this ecosystem better as we're developing it. Because, again, we have a long way to go in terms of where people go in order to get specific resources so that they can have access to capital, the resources that they need in order to define what services they have gaps in their businesses, and then also making sure that they're able to scale their businesses appropriately in Miami. A lot of those different parts and pieces in a more established metropolitan area for a tech ecosystem already there. But in Miami, we have to continue to develop that over time. So my office is specifically created in order to help expand that as we continue to go. And that means that my office is going to change a lot. So what I was doing a year ago when I was in this role is not at all what I'm currently doing as we kind of do as a focus. But as we continue to grow and develop, the goal is to, as Miami continues to grow, we iterate and grow with it.
Thank you. Thank you. Jesse, you've got a bird's eye view of what's happening in the county in your role. And maybe you could give us some perspective, a sort of reality of what's been happening here across the county. Sort of, the commissioner and Erick have defined this rapid evolution of the region. Could you put a little bit of a reality to that for us, so we understand exactly what's been happening in Miami-Dade County?
We're seeing exponential growth in all industries. We are seeing our tourism sector and our hospitality sector, which have always been landmarks of the region, really explode with positive momentum. The way that the commissioner was saying, we had our best year at Miami International Airport, the best year at the port in both the tourism and cargo side. We are seeing our real estate market boom as well. The Mayor Levine Cava always says that the crane is our state bird, and when you look out from her office, you see all the cranes that are really showcasing the incredible momentum in the real estate market. The technology market marked by capital, venture capital funding, but also new startups that are increasing here, and the engineers and operators that support those startups is really growing, and it's not something that happened overnight. It happened over a series of years with organizations like Converge and Knight Foundation that have really made it a part of that growth. And on the other hand, we are also seeing greater income inequality. We are seeing the cost of housing go up in a way that is becoming unaffordable for residents that have been here a long time, 10 years plus. And we are seeing we are starting to see the face of climate change. And we're at a moment in time where we are really at sort of ground zero of what a lot of the other regions on the coastal areas are going to start seeing. So there is a lot of great things that are happening. Our unemployment is at 2.2%. That is lower than most of the places. But how we make sure that we're really thinking about those local jobs, the way that Erick was saying, is really important. And so our responsibility in the county is to work with all of our partners, our municipalities, the Board of County Commissioners, that have really set the tone for the way that we need to do government business at the speed of business. And what that means is a public-private approach to solving our solutions and galvanizing the energy and the momentum around all of the positive things that we are seeing in the private sector to ensure that we are addressing our toughest problems. And from our perspective, one of the ways that we are doing that is with the Miami-Dade Innovation Authority, which you mentioned, is to make sure that we are just coming at every single problem from a public-private perspective, and that we are taking some of the learnings from the private sector in the way that Erick was talking about and implementing those into the policies, processes, and partnerships that we are developing at a government level.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner, Jesse just opened the door to ending the sort of sunshine and rainbows discussion about Miami-Dade County with all the growth, because we all know that there's a double-edged sword, and we've seen places like San Francisco, Boston, and other markets, Seattle comes to mind, great explosive growth due to innovation, but then challenges come. What do you see as the greatest challenges brewing across the region as a result of all this growth?
Yeah, so with the growth obviously comes quite a few challenges, and there's a pretty popular saying that says you may not be into government, may not be interested in government, but government is certainly interested in you, and that is very true because the policies that are being set by your leaders are directly affecting and impacting your lives. It is why Florida and why Miami has seen such an influx of people, because states like California and New York did not pass necessarily pro-business policies during a critical time, i.e. the pandemic. And the majority of people didn't go to North Florida or Central Florida or the Panhandle. They came here to Miami-Dade County because we're proud of the policies that we have that support small businesses and that foster this entrepreneurial spirit and that are creating this kind of hub of innovation and technology. We also message from the board's perspective that when you come here, we want you to be here, we want you to bring your business here. We're going to provide you with incentives when and if possible. But that when you do arrive here, we do ask you to provide decent wages and a salary that is commensurate with the cost of living here in Miami-Dade County, because the direct result of an influx of population and very, very wealthy individuals, which is the reality of a large portion of the population that has moved to Miami-Dade County, is it has directly affected our price of almost everything, right? Especially homes. And so the creation of this beautiful ecosystem has simultaneously created the issue of a complete affordability crisis that we tackle every single day at the board. And we have a number of programs, a number of homeownership incentive programs that have been created to kind of balance that issue. But in addition, traffic. If you live here in Miami-Dade County or if you visit us regularly, you have likely been stuck in 5 o'clock traffic, and it's not 5 o'clock traffic anymore. It starts at about 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So we have major transportation issues that we need to address as well, and thankfully the board is incredibly proactive in pushing projects that have been sitting for years and years and years. And this is why I say leadership matters so much, because if you have leaders that understand the urgency of now and are committed with delivering problems, not just warming chairs and rhetoric, you're going to see a community that is better prepared for those issues. Our former mayor used to say that the only thing worse than traffic is no traffic. And we saw that at the pandemic, right? We saw Miami-Dade go, and everywhere in the country, go from congestion to eerily empty roads. Now, thankfully, and that's a heavy word when I say thankfully, we're back to traffic. But how are we going to protect the quality of life of our residents while we deal with that traffic? We have a lot of plans on our agenda, very, very big financial decisions coming up on how we're going to move our people through this county and how we're going to address our affordability crisis. I think those two are likely the top two issues that our residents here in Miami-Dade County would call the greatest issues as of recent.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I'm going to come back to you in a minute on those decisions that need to be made. Jesse, if you could just maybe briefly, given some of the challenges you mentioned, the commissioners mentioned, what are some of the obstacles that you face, your office faces, in convincing companies or entrepreneurs to come to Miami-Dade County, given kind of our current landscape?
The biggest obstacles relate to housing. They relate to traffic. No one likes to sit in traffic. and they relate to ensuring that people can be hired locally. We have an amazing university system here in Miami-Dade County. We have a number of institutions, and if you look at the metrics, we could be considered a university town because of the amount of students that we have each year that are coming from our different institutions. But it is not widely understood that we are growing local talent. And so we need to do a better job of really underscoring the talent that we are growing here, the incredible programs and the agility in the programs that we have to meet the demand that the workforce, that the employers have with our workforce. One of the things that we are really proud of is a program, for example, Level Up, which is a program done with the Knight Foundation, Miami-Dade County, and the City of Miami to ensure that any student that wants to enroll in Miami-Dade College for a technology class can do so for free. And the City of Miami and Miami-Dade County came together with the Knight Foundation to deploy ARPA dollars, $12 million into Miami-Dade College to ensure that this was accessible to everyone. I don't know of other jurisdictions which in the middle of the pandemic so quickly focused on the biggest growing sector and saying, you know what, we are going to invest here and we are going to make sure that anyone that wants to get a job in the sector that is growing the fastest will be able to do so. And it is one example of the types of programs that we just need to make sure that we are elevating and telling the story for and creating more of those programs so that when companies move here, they know that they can hire locally for the talent that they need.
That's great, thank you. And so a lot of innovation, a lot of startup activity, and one of the things that Miami became known for through all this is venture capital. Refresh Miami, which is one of the top tech blogs here in the region, had an article last week, and the title of the article was Venture Capital Took a Nosedive in Q1. How is Miami faring relative to the rest of the country? How is the Miami-Dade County region faring relative to the rest of the country when it comes to investment? Are we seeing the same kind of nosedive? Are we hitting a wall?
So I think everybody here knows that market conditions right now on the whole at a macro level are low, right? Interest rates are, they're very much, that's not, it's not a surprise whatsoever to speak to that. So the question is, in understanding that the entire market is having issues in that particular way, what should we be thinking about in terms of Miami? Is this a specific Miami problem, or does Miami have an even more pronounced problem than other places in the nation? And one thing that we have to really look at is if Miami has been positioning itself in terms of growth, 2021, 2022, that was 4.6 and I think 5.8 in terms of how we've been growing over time. If you're looking at a single quarter in order to determine whether or not we've hit a nosedive, I think that's a little bit of an overstatement. But let's take that quarter one for what it is. If we're looking at how Miami's venture capital has been kind of broken down, we normally do Series A. We're seed round Series A in terms of how we focus. FinTech as a predominant focus with 41% of the venture capital that we've had being specifically in FinTech. With it being in seed round and Series A and having overall macro conditions where VCs are going to stop pulling into new investments. They're actually going to start either doubling down on investments that they already made in order to secure them, to make sure that they're okay, or to be a little bit more, let's say, timid when it comes to new investments that they may have. Miami would see a hit in terms of new investments that are going to be made, seeming as we only mainly have a market of seed round and Series A. That does not mean that Miami is uniquely positioned to do bad this year because of what Q1 has stated. But it does mean that we have to start thinking about how these things end up in the long term. If we want to have an ecosystem that is diverse in terms of venture capital, are we actually creating companies that are going to be here through a Series B, a Series C, and further along, right? We haven't seen really huge IPOs or exits. Well, obviously Magic Leap is not one. They're still a private company. But thinking about like a Chewy up the coast or a UKG up the coast a little bit further up north as well. we have to start seeing more of those. But remember, 2-3 years ago, that's not even the time frame of a normal investment turnaround for a fund. So as we start to look at a 10-year time horizon, are we going to start seeing more companies that do? I think so. But we need a couple more years to say conclusively, at least through numbers, to say that's definitely 100% going to happen. But we are headed in the right direction with the overall number of deals that we've been having, especially with the increase. And I'm expecting that we're going to have a little bit of a correction from the Q1 that we've had moving into the rest of this year. But that's me going out on a limb and saying
That's great.
that for
Well,
sure.
as someone who's also bullish about the county, the region, and our economic future, and I see the challenges that we've talked about continuing, Commissioner, I would ask your perspective on how are the public and private sectors coming together to solve these challenges. And obviously, being at a mobility conference, I think everybody here in some way mentions traffic and congestion as a challenge. How is the county addressing this? Is the county partnering with the public sector or the private sector to leverage innovative solutions? What is being done to address this so that as we have this hopefully bullish continued growth, we're able to sustain our quality of life?
Yeah, so, transportation and traffic in Miami-Dade County, it's really a difficult solution, a difficult problem to solve, but that's not to say that we haven't taken very proactive steps. I represent the south part of Miami-Dade County, and we are pretty close to the end of a $300 million, what we call bus rapid transit project, that is a investment in public transportation that we are hoping will significantly get more cars off the road. We are heavily investing in a northern corridor, a northeast corridor, and a beach corridor in our public transportation entire network that we call the SPART plan. Those are in our budgets, and those are being voted on as early as Tuesday for a mid-year budget adjustment. But all of that to say, these projects that I just mentioned, the South Corridor, the Northeast Corridor, the North Corridor, the Beach Corridor, these are public transportation routes that essentially don't exist or have been incredibly underutilized previously. We are now kicking those into gear and pulling them off the shelf and figuring out aggressive ways to partner with our federal government, with our state government, to get the funding to make sure that these projects are implemented, and so that in the next 5 to 10 years, our community will have a viable public transportation option here in Miami-Dade County. That's not to knock our current public transportation. It is a wonderful system, but there is unfortunately a psychology here in Miami-Dade County, unlike larger metropolitan communities like Boston or New York, that public transportation is, it's not for me, it's for someone else. My mother rode public transportation for 20 years in Miami-Dade County and relied on it every single day. We need more choice riders, not riders that have to use our public transportation. And so we're right now investing hundreds of millions, if not close to billions of dollars in our public transportation system, so that in the near future, this growth, we're expecting it to continue. I don't see any reason why it won't continue. Listen, Miami is a special place. We're in Florida. There are very low taxes. We have the most beautiful people. We have the most beautiful beaches. It's a place where you want to be, and I don't blame you. And this government, at least, is very, very proactive about providing actual solutions. And I refer to government and leadership again because, government in Miami-Dade County changed substantially just a couple of years ago, where the county commissioners would sit on the dais or in their seat for 20 plus years. We now are subject to what's called term limits. We have a maximum of 8 years to get something done for our community. And the average age of the commissioners in Miami-Dade County, I think, dropped by like 25 years. That is a recipe for very eager government officials wanting to do for their communities for the short time that we're here. So I am very optimistic that our transportation challenges will be at least mitigated by a more robust, user-friendly, and I've said to the administration, we will do this once these corridors start to get completed, a messaging campaign to our residents saying, this is new, this is available, this is accessible, this is safe. Come and take your family on public transportation and see it, because if we spend $1 billion on these beautiful systems that nobody utilizes because the psychology of the community is still stuck with car is king, we haven't done our job. So we are looking at all of this and not just looking at it and studying it, but putting significant dollars behind these investments right now.
That's great. I will ask one follow-up question, which I mentioned earlier, which is, here's water in case you need some, is these decisions take a lot of political will, both from the elected officials and in some respects the community, right? You mentioned $1 billion, $1 billion investment sort of in the community. It sounds like you think that we've hit the breaking point where that political will is there. Do you feel like that's the case, that Miami-Dade has sort of hit that point where the problems have gotten bad enough that people say, look, if it takes a really big investment to solve these problems, we're ready to do it?
Yeah, I mean, yes, the answer to that is yes. And I do think that from our residents' perspective, and again, we're home to 3 million hardworking, amazing people. I'm born and raised in this community. I know it well, and I've seen the changes. I think our residents are welcoming of the change, welcoming of the dollars, welcoming of your wonderful innovation and technology companies, but they simultaneously want to know that we're doing for them, the hardworking teachers, police officers, firefighters that have been there their entire lives as well. And so things are changing in Miami-Dade County, but in a really, really great and special way. And so I think we're at that turning point. I think we're at that breaking point. This board, if you've had the opportunity to meet some of my colleagues, I know the chairman of our board was here yesterday. He talks about our board operating at the speed of business. You don't hear too many government bodies speak in that way. It's because we get it. We get that your businesses, every day that you don't get something done is a day that is costing you money. So we are trying to move expeditiously, not only to serve our residents and provide them solutions, but to send the message to the business community that we get it, we're here to work with you, and help bring these solutions to our residents. So the answer is yes, the political will is there, and I do think that we're at that breaking point.
Thank you. I think for this crowd, that's great news. And so, Chessie, I want to ask you the next question, which is, as Miami's gone through this sort of cultural explosion, we have things like Art Basel and events like CoMotion, where really interesting, innovative people come to our community and they bring great ideas. What can we do to encourage them? And this question may be also for Erick as well, to encourage those people to bring their great ideas and their innovation here, right? I mean, they're solving problems with their innovation, right? And I'd like to think about that from a mobility and transportation lens, if you could. But how do we encourage all these amazing people that come to CoMotion to say, if you've got cool ideas to solve problems, do it here. Come here first.
So, when people have great ideas, one of the things that they need is they need funding and they need resources. And there are a lot of places across the U.S. that say, we want you to come here and we want you to bring your great ideas. But what Miami-Dade is doing, which is really unique, is that it is creating the institutional mechanisms to become a laboratory for great ideas. And it is doing so by ensuring that we are creating processes and policies, and the board is leading on this, that allow us to do business at the speed of business. So how do we make sure that we move faster and with businesses? It is putting resources, financial resources, through incentives through the Miami-Dade Innovation Authority, through other programs with our partners like the Beacon Council, the Chamber of Commerce, and other private partners that we have, to ensure that as companies are scaling, they have capital to be able to grow. We are putting capital behind our education systems to make sure that they have the workers in order to be able to scale their technology and scale their company. And we are creating the economic conditions so that when you have a really good idea, we bring both the public and the private sector together. One of the things that became really untenable for some of the other cities that we drew from during the pandemic was, at best, an apathetic relationship between the public and private sector, and at worst, a confrontational relationship with the public and private sector. And one of the things that allows us to really create this lab here in Miami-Dade County is that we embrace the private sector. And so when we have a problem, we don't sit sort of in government and say, okay, we're going to come up with a solution and, then we're going to push it out the way that the commissioner was talking about. Government is in the day-to-day of everyone's life. We really hear from the community, we listen, and we work together to find a solution. One of the things that my office right now is working on the innovation side is sargassum. Sargassum is in the news, it's top of mind for everyone. Our economy is our environment, so we need to make sure that our beaches stay as beautiful as they are. And there is no sort of silver bullet for sargassum. It is heavy, it is smelly, and it is annoying, And so and we're going to do an industry day next week where we're going to be focused on hearing from industry what can be done with the sargassum that we pick up to create bricks, to create leather clothing are some of the ideas that we've heard, to think about other building opportunities, and how do we really make sure that we are working together and in partnership to scale those ideas that come from the private sector.
Thank you. I'll be wearing sargassum shoes to the next CoMotion conference. Just as to sort of be mindful of the clock here, what I'd like to do to maybe have a chance for a question period, if anyone has a question, is just sort of take this exercise that we did earlier where we zoomed back 5 years, now zoom forward 5 years. Are we doing the things necessary to prepare for Miami 2028? When we're sitting here in CoMotion 2028 with our sargassum shoes, are we going to be looking around and saying, we did all the things needed to make the investments necessary to create that great Miami-Dade of the future? You've already answered a lot of that. I'd almost ask you to sort of say, almost in brief, are we doing it? So starting with the commissioner, put you on the spot. But yes.
No, yes. So are we doing it? Are we prepared for the next 5 years? I think we will be. And, I think everyone knows Miami-Dade County is known for being a world-class community. Our arts, our entertainment, our nightlife, our dining, our beaches, certainly now, technology. It has always been my position that Miami-Dade County must be world-class for its residents. And so the preparation into the next 5 years is continuing to welcome you, your ideas, your innovation, partner with you as government, but simultaneously require, if not mandate, that there are provisions in place to make sure that our residents are taken care of. And I think with that balance in mind, we will be prepared in the next 5 years. I think real transportation solutions either will be completed or close to completed at that point. Regarding affordable housing in my district, we are working very hard to create a modular housing community. That's an innovative way to bring affordable housing to our residents. These are prefabricated homes that are built off-site, hurricane resistant, and we are hopefully going to be able to deliver that kind of product in my district for home ownership, not just rentals, so that everybody can have access to that American dream. And again, I'm only one of 13 commissioners. I can't speak for all of them, but at our meetings, everyone is very committed to being prepared for the future. So the answer is yes. I think we're taking the necessary steps, welcoming business, being ready for businesses, embracing innovation, simultaneously and equally making sure we're taking care of our residents.
Well, thank you. Only because I think we've hit our time. I'll stop with that because I don't think anybody could answer it any better anyway. So thank you for that. Any questions before we wrap? No. Well, then I just want to thank our panelists. Oh, do we have a question? Okay, there's one in the way back. All I see is lights. So go. I saw through the lights. Okay. Please ask.
This will be a quick question. My name is Ray, founder of Charge Pros. Basically, we are the fastest growing EV charge installation company in Florida as of maybe a couple of months ago. And as we're growing and we're doing great things, part of my challenge is, as you grow, you have employees now that I didn't have before. Got to buy vehicles and all that stuff. So I think, as I'm focusing on the business, I find it, at least for me, a little bit of a struggle where, I have to get either funding or how do we scale this thing? Because we're, growing the rest of the state and eventually nationally. That's the plan. But locally, how do I think, Erick, I think you mentioned it, but what would be the starting point? How can I access either resources or how can we get help? Because I'm, it's just me in the sense that I'm trying to run the business, so I don't really have the time to like focus on, okay, how do I do this other part as well, so we can go ahead and grow and scale.
To be really quick, the three people on the stage, you reach out to us because we're actively trying to engage with businesses like yours to make sure that we're connecting our local talent to companies like yours that's growing at scale and says they want local talent. Yeah. And I think that's a really big thing. Post-pandemic, people said, oh my goodness, everything is remote now. Is everybody just going to be in their homes? And people are starting to realize, no, we're social creatures. We like being in close proximity. That's how creativity spurs. That's how innovation spurs. So I know that Chessie is doing a lot in terms of thinking about how talent is going to be connected and the work that's going to be done with the Innovation Authority. And then my office is doing a lot in terms of, as we have been doing the hiring fairs, we're now building out a database to make sure that local talent is better connected with companies. More than happy to discuss more on that matter, but there's a lot of work that's being done to make sure that we're front-facing this local talent as you're growing your company.
Thanks.
There are some really interesting loan programs also that we can tell you about, because when you hire, you need to spend more to hire. There are some grant programs that are available that we can tell you about. And then there is at the heart of it, startups are small businesses. They're just digital. And so there are really good small business programs. Strive 305 is one that has a lot of connection points with the community that I would recommend you check out.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. I think that's it for questions. Anybody else? Yep, we're good. Thank you to the panel. Really appreciate it.